What's up, everybody? Welcome to Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Katie Mox. Today, we're talking AFC North predictions. So let's welcome in our guest from the Extra Points Podcast Network and the host of the -3 podcast, Dave Dameshek. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today and lending your time. I feel like I haven't seen you since the Super Bowl.
Well, you feel that way because that is the last time we crossed paths. Yeah, so much has happened between then and now. If you haven't been paying attention, Aaron Rodgers went and lived in a hole for a week or something like that,
Yes.
and reemerged in his new figure, a Jet. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about it. We're fewer than 7 weeks away. We made it through the football this summer. I know we still have a ways to go. We still have to get through the Civil War reenactments known as preseason football games, but we're essentially there, right?
We are essentially there. I could not be more excited. I appreciate your enthusiasm as well. We're talking about the AFC North today. You are a Steelers fan, and I'm admiring your background back here. And you did say that you are like Rachel and Friends. You have a story for every single one of them. I'm not going to have you go through all of them, but tell me about the defense, the D in the fence. Obviously, with the Steelers, not too hard to figure out, but what's that story?
Oh, well, yes. Over my left shoulder is the true, well, a lot of people don't know this outside the banks of the Three Rivers and even within, that the Steel Curtain is not the entire defense. It was originally just the front four of Mean Joe Green, Fats Holmes, Dwight White, and L.C. Greenwood. I have that jersey all signed by that foursome, three of whom are no longer with us. And just below that, I have a frame sign that they handed out in Denver in front of, what was that? It was January of 2006. It was the AFC title game, a mile high. That was when Big Ben Roethlisberger was in his sophomore season, and Jerome Bettis, who was from Detroit and still is, were a game away from getting to the Super Bowl. They handed out those defense signs for Broncos fans. I brought it for all of eternity to remind them the defense could not stop number 7, number 36, and the rest of the crew. The Steelers went to the Super Bowl and won it.
Oh my God, that is a great story and absolutely deserves to be framed on your wall. All right, before we get into the actual division, I have already placed a bet. Even though I am a 49ers fan, I have already placed a bet that the AFC North will be the winning division in the Super Bowl at plus 475. They're not the favorite. Obviously, the AFC West is the favorite. That's where Patrick Mahomes lives. But I think when you look at the quarterbacks and the coaches in this division, it is hard to bet against them. Also, great defenses and a ton of talent on offense in terms of weapons. But if you had to pick, and if we look at these odds right here, again, AFC West is the favorite, plus 325. Then it goes the AFC East. Then you go NFC East, NFC West, all the way down. And then the AFC North. What division do you think is winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I hate to come in with so mild a take right out of the gate here, but I'm going to go with the AFC West. I hear where you're coming from on the AFC North. Of course, Joe Cool and company are a great pick to survive the rugged AFC. As good as any pick this side of the Chiefs, of course. After that, though, I don't know that you can reasonably make much of a case that any of the other three teams are going to win it all. Maybe make some miracle run, but of course that requires a minimum of 3 victories, more likely 4 victories to get over the hump. So I'm not going to take any of those teams. Now, I completely hear, as I say, the chances of the Bengals, but I'm going to double down on the Chiefs, who are the favorite to win it all for obvious reasons. And then just behind them, the Chargers. Perennially, people make fun of me because I have embraced these Chargers since about 3 minutes after Justin Herbert's arrival in Los Angeles. I think people, the thing I always point to in the mini era of head-to-head matchups, some teams consistently have another team's number, even if it doesn't, in terms of X's and O's and black and white, make a ton of sense on a piece of paper. Witness how the Saints have gotten over on the Buccaneers, even with Tom Brady wearing that uniform. I don't know what happened to that guy, but remember he was on the Buccaneers for a little while. That was funny when he was. And may yet be again, unless he's on the Dolphins or the Raiders. That's another story. But the Chargers play the Chiefs as tough as anybody. So in their head-to-heads, watch that number and see if it gets as big as a touchdown. Always. take the Chargers in that. But beyond that, the Chargers have really done a good job of showing up and competing with the Chiefs. Like I say, about as good a job as anybody, along with the Bengals there. So I think that at least gives you two teams. I don't think the Broncos have a Super Bowl in them. Neither do the Raiders, but I could absolutely see pie in the sky if just once the football gods would smile on the Chargers. Let's keep in mind, here's one of the, as we project ahead, I know we're talking the North, but I just want to give one note about the Chargers this year. The thing that people kind of like was under the radar all last year and people have forgotten about. And so I think there's a little bit of value on the Chargers where otherwise there wouldn't be. And specifically, Justin Herbert is an MVP candidate. He played most of the year hurt. Remember the game in Arrowhead? I think it was week 2 when he hurt his ribs. And then it was like uncomfortable to even look at, like when he couldn't throw the ball for a little bit. He played with bum ribs for most of the season. And yet they still made the playoffs. They didn't have Rashawn Slater at left tackle for the majority of the season. The receivers were hurt. This is the Chargers. They're always hurt, of course. But I do think that if right in year 4, this is a chance for Justin Herbert to get to another level, even in a brutal AFC. So circle the team in powder blue and gold. And now let's move on to the North.
I don't disagree with you. I was very high on the Chargers last year, and of course they disappointed me. But yes, I do think that Justin Herbert playing with like no rib cartilage, I believe it was, for basically the entire season, was a huge part of that. I do like him over his passing yards. I think he's going to have another 5,000 yard year this year. I am also big on the Chargers. But they, like you said, they can't stay healthy at all. And, you know, the Chargers are going to charge just like the Mets are going to Mets. There's some teams that just can't seem to make it past the hump. So I agree with you there, but we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are talking futures for the AFC North. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, welcome back to Moxie Bets. Time now for Capper's Corners. We welcome back our guest, Dave Dameshek. We're previewing AFC North. We already told you this, so let's take a look at the odds to win the division. Every team in the AFC North will face every team in the AFC South and in the NFC West. The AFC South had just one playoff team last year, while the AFC South had the worst win percentage in the league. And of course, the NFC West only had 2 playoff teams last year. Bengals are the favorite, plus 135. They are seeking their 3rd straight division title for the first time in team history. Then you got the Ravens, plus 250. The Browns, plus 380. And then your Steelers at plus 500. Now we will get your pick, your official pick to win the division at the end of the show. But let's start at the top with the favorites and the Bengals. High win total, Dave, 11.5. It's the most at Caesars, tied with the Chiefs and the Eagles. Now the Niners were 11.5, but we've already seen that bet down to 10.5, which I do like that number better in terms of betting. This under is juiced though to minus 125. You get plus 105 on that over. Look, Super Bowl odds plus 1,000, conference plus 500. We know they're the favorite to win the division. You said that the Bengals could possibly win. That was the only team that maybe could beat out a Patrick Mahomes or a Chargers. How far do you think that the Bengals can go this year? They've added to the O-line. They've retooled the defense. Joe Burrow?
I think the 12 wins is, it feels a little bit optimistic as we sit here in late July. It's a little scary to take any team to win in pro football, to win as many as a dozen games. Still getting used to that extra game, though. 17 gives you a little bit of latitude, I suppose, there. I say it all the time. This is the most glorious time to be a football fan on the calendar, because there are very few teams, for real, that you can say it's easier to talk yourself into any team making the playoffs versus talking yourself into that team definitely won't make the playoffs, barring obviously major injury. Obviously, if Joe Burrow went down or anything like that, that would scuttle things. But the Bengals are as complete a team. Yes, they have some legit questions on the back end on defense. The offensive line should be better, but that has continued to be a multi-year thing that they're trying to build towards. It remains imperfect. No team has a flawless roster in the age of free agency, of course. But the Bengals are as close to complete, or at least their quarterback. They're, the idea of franchise quarterback and guy who's worth 40 or 50 or $55 million and the amount of cap that he will consume once he starts making that kind of bank is something that is very real. It's not a coincidence that roughly half of the quarterbacks who reached the Super Bowl out of the last 20 years are on their rookie deals. That is not a fluke. Even in the age of Brady, that is true. Joe Burrow has yet to really, his heavy deal that will be is not impacting the Bengals just yet. So the window remains open there. And I do like, for what it matters in terms of approach philosophically, remember how since he started a year ago, the Steelers went into Cincinnati. They're riding high, just missed the Super Bowl. The Steelers knocked them off. Then they went to Big D and lost to the Dak Prescott list Cowboys. All of a sudden, the sky was falling. They righted the ship. They won the division. I suspect that they show up ready to roll earlier in the season, so they won't even have to work themselves out from behind the 8 ball like they did in 2022. So I think the path is clear. Even in, it's not like I'm not saying that the rest of the division is lousy or mediocre and the Bengals should roll them. I just like where they are in terms of where Joe Burrow is at this stage with his weapons, and even with the Joe Mixon factor and what that's going to be. I think his carries and his touches go down a little bit. No matter, I think the Bengals are the class of the division and they win it.
I agree with you on both points. I do think that they will win it. I'm not going to take them to win. I'm going a little bit further down the board for a value pick that I think is just a little bit sneaky in this division. But as far as the win total at 11.5, totally agree with you. This number feels a little too lofty. They have gone over their win total in each of the last 2 seasons, but of course it was not this high. It was not 11.5. They did win 12 games last year, but they have failed to do that in the 6 previous seasons. Yes, they beefed up their O-line with Orlando Brown Jr., which should be great. And we hope that Joe Burrow doesn't get pummeled as he has in years past, because this guy's such a stud. It would be a shame if his career doesn't go as long as it absolutely should. They did go defense heavy in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft this year. So it'll be interesting to see what those prospects look like. And when I was looking at their schedule of the top teams in the NFL, the Bengals actually have the easiest expected schedule. Their 2023 opponents went just over, barely over 500 as far as like collectively win total percentage last year. But the AFC North as a whole got a lot better, okay? The Ravens got better, the Browns got better, the Steelers got better. So everyone in their division is going to be so much more competitive. I just don't see them getting more than 10 wins. I feel like this is a 10-win season for them. Plus, the AFC South looks a lot different now. The Colts and the Texans have revamped. D-Hop is now in Tennessee. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. I do think that they should win this division, even though I won't bet them, but I can't give them over 11.5 wins either.
I'm doing it. I'm going to, listen, the worst to first factor is real. And, the idea that you can just safely ride with a team because they won the division last year or even 2 years in a row is foolish thinking largely. In this case, though, like I say, the common thread that is Joe Burrow through this rise of the Bengals, as long as that's in place and he has Jamar Chase and his pass catchers, I ride with them. I do think that there are some struggles for them defensively that a lot of people are ignoring a little bit. The idea that, Dax Hill's a future Pro Bowler is not a solve necessarily. It's optimistic thinking that you can just replace their 2 high-end, two members of their high-end secondary without missing a beat. Is, as I say, there probably are some fits and starts in an improved division, 2 games against what you figure to be an improved Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, and Lamar Jackson. The math on that doesn't necessarily favor Cincy. Again, though, in the QB league, I'm going to go with the 1A in this league, Joe Burrow and his team.
Makes sense. All right, moving on to the Ravens. Their win total set to 9.5 with that over juice to minus 165. If you don't think they could do it, there's some value there, plus 140. They are the second to win the division at plus 250. How far do you think that the Ravens will go? And do you think that this is a 10-win season for them? They got Zay Flowers, they got OBJ, they got rid of Greg Roman finally. Lamar, can he stay healthy? What do you think?
Well, I said I apologize for my tepid takes earlier. Here's what I think counts as a hot take: the Baltimore Ravens are going to finish in 4th place this year, unless Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson can't right the career ship, then that will be your 4th place team.
Wow.
But short of that happening, the Ravens are going to be, and that it's not that they're going to be abject garbage. They're not going to be 5 wins or anything like that. But it's funny that I absolutely, and have said this for now 2 years. And by the way, I was on the Lamar Jackson. I was a Lamar Jackson whisperer for the last few years because I did predict his MVP season and their
Okay.
dominance over the NFL way
Yeah.
back when, 2019. And
Mhm.
as I predicted, defensive coordinators kind of figured out what the Ravens were doing, and it was diminishing returns. And then you start adding in the injuries. Now,
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's injuries, I get, are not owed to him specifically being a running quarterback. And I do remind you that Tom Brady missed a full year of his career. Peyton Manning did with his neck. Drew Brees missed full years. Pocket passing is not the solution to never getting injured. But it's 2 years in a row now with Lamar Jackson where he's missed giant swaths of the back end of the season. Maybe that's a fluke. Maybe it's not. On top of that, it is not a small matter that all of a sudden, yes, perhaps it's a positive. Todd Monken trying to drag him into the 21st century with an upgraded pass attack. But the idea that they won't skip a beat installing that is, again, like
Mm,
I say, a little too pie in the sky for me. And the main
mm.
factor with these Ravens that is, well, I wouldn't say troubling to me as somebody who roots for another team in the AFC North, but the thing that would be a red flag for me in Charm City is that they feel like a little bit like they've lost their soul, similar to what the
Mm.
Pittsburgh Steelers had over the last 4 years or 5 years or so, which is to say, the reason that rivalry is great is because there are not stylistic differences between those two. Very often, that's what makes a rivalry so good. Is Frazier versus Ali were so different in the ring. Ravens and Steelers, aside from the uniforms, are very similar, largely, or at least have been. They make a lot of the same philosophical choices in terms of personnel and otherwise. The Ravens have gotten a little too fancy pants in the last couple of years. They've lost sight of their core, which is the line of scrimmage and bully ball. And
Mm.
in a world that is owned by Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert, you can win if you have one of those drivers, a guy who can drag you through whatever other issues on your roster might otherwise bring you down. I don't know that Lamar Jackson is that kind of a guy. They need to be able to
Mhm.
beat people up at the line of scrimmage, and they don't have it. They don't have a pass rush right now. I have questions about their secondary. They are not the Baltimore Ravens as we perceive them. You know how people always swoon over. Same thing in Pittsburgh. People always like, they're tough. You know, they always run the ball and they're always tough on defense. That is not what the Steelers were for the last 5 years. I suspect that the Ravens are going to go through some fits and starts trying to be a passing team on some level. I know they have the weapons
Yeah.
now, but I don't
Yeah.
necessarily buy that, in September and October at least, that Todd Mungan's going to walk in the door and be some savior for what has ailed the Ravens offense the last couple of years. So I am pessimistic about this Baltimore team, relatively speaking. Again, they're not a 5-win team. They're more like an 8 or 9-win team. But the question here is, are they going to transcend 9.5? The answer is no. No, they will not.
Well, Dave, I don't even know what to say about this. I am on the opposite side. I am drinking the Kool-Aid fully, and now I'm walking back drinking the Kool-Aid in my head based on everything that you just said. But the Ravens have won 10 plus games in 4 out of the last 5 seasons since drafting Lamar Jackson. They did stay under their win total in the last 3 seasons, but those were a lot higher. Those were at least, 10 and a half, 11 and a half. So the fact that I think they have retooled this offense, they've given Lamar some real pass catchers. They have, Todd Monken. They got rid of Greg Roman, which had no idea how to use Lamar Jackson or utilize him in the way that I think that he should be used. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm saying, okay, we're getting a lower win total. We got a better offense. Lamar Jackson just got paid. I also like them as a sneaky pick to win the division at plus 250. I am completely on the opposite side of you here. So we'll have to see how that one works out. I will say, the division more than I do because it is yours. It would be like talking to me with the NFC West. And so now I am a little bit scared about this pick. But you know what? We've already put it in. So plus 250 for the Ravens to win the division.
Well, where's the
and I do
pass
think
rush? I mean, so much of their soul,
yeah,
so much of their identity is that they heat you
yeah,
up when they have a lead in the second half. I don't see that that's an advantageous matchup for them. I mean, now listen, what they did last year, what they have done, and what a lot of teams do is they find those edge rushers late in training camp after teams make their cut. Justin Houston is out there. He might be a factor at the time of this recording. Kyle Van Noy may or may not join that team. Obviously, they're strong at inside linebacker. The issue is that an essential position in the year of the Lord 2023? Is that going to swing games in their, I don't necessarily, I feel bad for J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, he was not at full speed a year ago. And I don't know until we see it that, again, glass half full, as you
yeah.
clearly are, Katie. The idea that like finally Lamar Jackson is going to be in the offense
Yeah.
that suits him, like, is he
Yeah.
for sure? Or is the offense that suits him? Now, the shelf life for what he had been doing for the last handful of years probably doesn't lead to him playing when he's 42 years old, playing like that. Same goes for Josh Allen running all over the place and taking those big shots. The question is Lamar Jackson going to be able to just this year? He's got a couple of few years now with and the Ravens had no choice but to sign him from a marketing standpoint and beyond. But are they definitely positioned to thrive in this offense? And here's what I know I'm long-winded, but I have the Jenga theory. I have the Jenga theory, which is this.
Okay.
If you know how Jenga works in the 21st century in football,
Cool.
it's not a question of if players are going to get hurt. It's when players are going to get hurt and which players. If you remove the wrong player, much like a game of Jenga, the whole thing collapses on you. Now, that is obviously true with just about any team's quarterback. So removing them, who's the Jenga piece of the Ravens?
As a 49ers fan in the NFC Championship game, I know what this piece feels like.
Right. But okay, let's even in the quarterback league. So let's set aside quarterbacks because that's the essential position. Okay. After that, is it Mark Andrews? Maybe, but with the other pass catchers out there, it may be Ronnie Stanley. And that's something that has been semi-quietly, I guess, plagued the Ravens the last couple of years. I mean, the premise of that team was that he was a dominant left tackle a few years ago, but it's been a while now. And so it's not a coincidence that they haven't really gotten off the way you expect the Ravens to since he's been banged up. That's supposed to be one of, the Ravens perennially are supposed to have an advantage at the offensive line, and they haven't. And I wonder if this year they get back in form. If they don't, then I will be right. Hear me now, believe me later. They'll be the fourth place team.
Oh man, you make a lot of good, solid points there. So hard to argue against them. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see. But that is quite troubling. Moving on to another team that's quite troubling. It's the Browns. Okay. For some reason, they have a win total of 9.5 in Cleveland. That over plus 125, under juice to minus 145. I'm not even talking about them winning the Super Bowl or the conference because that's not happening. Division plus 380. This is a very hard team to predict because you don't know what Deshaun Watson you're going to get. Is it 2020? Is it the guy who led the league in passing yards? Is it someone that can't get over the shame and embarrassment of what he's done and the public perception of him? How do you see the Cleveland Browns this way? Are they a 10-win team?
Or a win team 10? I don't know. But anyway, we can put those words in any order we want to. This is the toughest call for me out. Well, listen. Yeah. Matter of fact, the Bengals is no easy one because that number is so lofty. But okay, the other team in the state of Ohio, the other one that wears orange hats, they're very funny as a pair. They're very enjoyable to laugh at as a duo. Imagine how many years have we had the Super Bowl now? 57, something like that. Whatever it's been. neither one of them's even. I mean, the Browns, not even once, not even by accident did they get to a Super Bowl. It just is an ongoing source of fun for me. Anywho, to the here and now. Yeah, they went out of their way and on purpose paid Deshaun Watson all that guaranteed money. And now there's nothing they can do about it. And it's very, like I say, again, another chapter filled with fun to laugh at. They're a fun plaything.
Yeah.
I think they have a real chance at 10, and I am going to go over with them.
Wow.
I think 10 is, huge year, obviously, for Barry and Stefanski and their approach to things. If this doesn't work, if they don't get to double digits, I really think that 9-8, would that be satisfying to the people in Cleveland? I don't know if ownership then moves on from them, but I think it would be borderline a failed experiment. I mean, how long as is the decision makers who, and I know the Haslams signed off on and encouraged the Deshaun Watson, but how long are you going to allow the people that put him in place for that level of bank? Are you going to allow them to continue to ride here? The high watermark from them was Baker Mayfield as the first overall pick. That was only a couple of years ago, and it feels like 10 at least since they went into Heinz Field and beat the Steelers in a playoff game. And then they cut bait with that guy. They can't get it out of their own way. I do think that they did clear the way a bit for Myles Garrett with the Zadarius Smith signing. I do think that legitimately helps their defense. And now the question, as you say, is I do think that they've quietly addressed the pass catching department, and I think they're okay there too. I think they have a really good offensive line. I think Nick Chubb is, if not the best running back in the conversation, he's one of the top three at least. So now it brings it all back to the $200 million man and whether or not he can return to form from now 3 years ago. The prevailing wisdom 10 years and starting 10 years ago and going all the way back till the dawn of people, the wisdom was, well, you can never take a year off of pro football because you just never get back. You just can never replicate that. You've a full year away. Well, it's been 3 years since Deshaun Watson's been good. Yes. I don't think that they're going to look to hide him in any way, but I do think that the defense will be a tick better. I think that the pass catchers will be a tick better. I think he'll be a tick better, and that adds up to 10 wins in a 17-game season.
This one is hard, and I lean under, and just from a personal standpoint, it's kind of just hard for me to root for someone like Deshaun Watson. And I do think, and I've taken a lot of flack for this online, I do think the mental, emotional toll on Deshaun Watson for everyone knowing what you've done and how kind of sick you are. And I've heard what people are yelling at him on the field, and fans and hecklers, and they're going to do that. I just think that mental, emotional thing is very hard to overcome, to really get in your game. And we saw it with Tiger Woods. And I know people are like, oh, Tiger Woods came back and won, another Masters. Yeah, 10 years later. But right after it happened, once people knew, he lost his edge, because you have this thing over everybody else. So I'm not sure about Deshaun Watson, but to your point, Nick Chubb is the favorite to have the most regular season rushing yards this year. He's at plus 600. He's above Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. Myles Garrett is the favorite to be Defensive Player of the Year this year. So they do have those pieces there. So if we see maybe not the 2020 version of Deshaun Watson, but if we see him, like you said, mildly better or even close to that, this team could be pretty lethal. But they have stayed under 12 wins, under their win total in 12 of the last 15 seasons. They've only had 10 plus winning seasons once in the last 15. So history tells you probably not, but to your point, it is very interesting. And it all, I think, relies on Deshaun Watson and how he can play. I just don't see him playing that well, but maybe he starts out rough and then he gets better. And the reality is, we know this league, Dave, once he starts winning, nobody cares what he's done. Everybody's chanting his name. Everybody's going to be excited about it again. And Yeah. So I'll lean under on
Well,
this one, but yeah.
I'm not going to fight you on any of those fine points. I think that my big question, a big question at least, is Stefanski came out of the gate hot.
Yeah.
People were
Yeah.
very excited about what he was doing. Finally, they have a guy who, a competent guy, but also the signature win that I mentioned two minutes ago came with him in his basement in Ohio. That seems weird that's the high water mark of his tenure as the head coach, was when he wasn't
Yeah.
physically at the game. Strange. And, to your point about Deshaun Watson, I don't know, in the last quarter century, no team has ever won a title at any level without being able to say, no one outside this locker room believed in us. And so the chip on the shoulder thing, every guy knows how to turn the successful guys turn that into a chip on the shoulder and use it and make sure like no one believes in us and no one likes us. But I hear you. I've been watching the Wilt Chamberlain documentary, and the idea that he is Goliath, that's the name of the documentary, in fact, is, how do you grapple with the guy who's supposed to do it? The curse of supposed to is what I talk about all the time. That's a heavy weight when you're supposed to be the team to do it, or you're the guy who's supposed to do it. That is heavy. And then on top of it, sprinkle in, people are actively rooting against you. They think you're a terrible person. I don't know Deshaun Watson well enough to know whether or not that lights a fire in him or if it burns him down.
Right. Yes. And that's kind of where I am too, on the fence with that. And I didn't think about that. And that's interesting. I want to watch that documentary. I just finished the Steph Curry one, Underrated. So the other side of it, right? When no one believes you can do it. And then, Steph Curry became Steph Curry. But yeah, Deshaun Watson, you're paid all that money, all that guaranteed money. You are the guy to come in and save the Browns. Ugh, that's a lot of pressure on top of a lot of people not
Remember what he did last year?
Let's move on.
Last year, Myles Garrett praised him. And look, oh no, he's been great. Like, I don't know what all the outside noise is about. So far, he's been really good here. He took the entire offensive unit and the coaches to the Bahamas. How many guys do that? Guys who are looking to absolve themselves of their past sin and win over those around him so that they like him and don't find him as problematic. Guys like that, Myles Garrett. Anyhow, let's move on.
Yes. And also Myles Garrett, the one who almost killed Mason Rudolph a couple years ago, but that's neither here nor there. All right, talking about the Steelers. This is your team, okay? Their win total is set to 9. That over juiced to -115. The Steelers won exactly 9 games in each of the last 2 seasons and have gone over their win total in the last 3. I thought last season might be Mike Tomlin's first losing season, but then y'all went on a 4-0 stretch at the end of the season. The guy just can't lose. Super Bowl plus 6,000, probably not happening. Conference plus 3,500, division plus 500. I don't know. Is it worth a little bit of a sprinkle? How are you feeling about Pittsburgh this year?
Well, first of all, you mentioned that who'd you say was underrated? It's funny how the overuse of Steph Curry. That's right. The overuse of the word underrated is, I think this speaks to the 21st century plague of vapid cynicism and to outsized vanity and narcissism. Because a person says, I consider the Steelers to be underrated, doesn't make them underrated. When you pick your head up and you look around, and most of football America saying like, hey, you know who's a little underrated? No one's really talking about the Steelers. When everybody is saying that, then they cease to be underrated. Either way. Well, as far as that goes, by the way, they opened up at their win total opened up at 8.5. And it was,
I liked it better.
Even money to go over. I mean, I go, what are we talking about here? Mike Tomlin never has a losing season. A year ago, went 9-8, rallied from the deep hole that they were in, not unlike Aaron Rodgers goes to for his recreational time. Well, it was different than that. We were in the crucible of the football season. They fell deep into a hole. And why? Because they were missing their Jenga piece, one of the 5 best non-quarterbacks in pro football, TJ Watt, for half the season. And they had a rookie quarterback in there, and yet they still won 9 games. You think they're going to go under 9 this year, maybe land on 9? I don't see it that way. They have done what the Ravens have kind of slipped up in and kind of let go a little bit, not getting distracted by the need for shiny new keys like Odell Beckham or otherwise, instead returning to what made them a winner over the years primarily, which is the line of scrimmage, and more accurately, I suppose, made the Philadelphia Eagles relevant over the last decade. They looked across the Keystone State, did Khan and company, and said, what is the key to the Eagles' ongoing playoff worthiness? And, you know, they were the Eagles, whether or not they're making Super Bowl runs, are always kind of in the mix for a playoff spot because they load up on both sides of the line of scrimmage, not just with high-end talent, but with depth there. That's exactly why they brought Andy Weidel back to Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh kid from Philadelphia. That's exactly what he said about doing. They are loaded up at the line of scrimmage now. And the bottom line is with this team is Kenny Pickett. Same as you would say about Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson. Those three question marks in the quarterback league, not surprising. But as long as Kenny Pickett, he is not required, given the formula in place for 2023. He is not required to be a superhero in AFC loaded with superhero quarterbacks. He is much more like superhero-y, like Hawkeye, though, or like Black Widow. Like Black Widow. He doesn't have to have Doctor Strange powers. He doesn't have to have, he doesn't even have to have Iron Man kind of powers. He just has to not turn the ball over and take care of the ball, be 21st century to the extent that you feed the ball to Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, your playmakers. I mean, they're loaded up with Freiermuth. If Allen Robinson pops, that would be a bonus. The strength of this team is the defense still, and I get in the quarterback league, I get the cynicism about, is that the right approach? You have to be able to shoot it out with people, but I really do say it's going to be diminishing returns. If your goal is really to go to the Super Bowl, not to get into the mix, but to go to the Super Bowl, that means you have to go through Burrow and Mahomes and likely Allen and likely Herbert. Do you want to do that with any quarterback? It's not a knock on Kenny Pickett. Is there any quarterback you want to attempt to run that gauntlet with? No. So if you can't do it via your quarterback, you got to do it bully ball style. Defense. And that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles did last year. That's what the Steelers are going to try to replicate. And I like their chances to do it at least into double-digit wins. And I don't think it's close. I think they get to at least 11 wins this year. I think your division goes like this. I think it goes Bengals 1, Steelers 2. I'm going to roll with the Brownies at 3, and the Ravens are bringing up the rear.
Oh, God. I mean, the Ravens thing still is like sending me for a little bit of a tailspin here because I've already locked in those bets. But I agree with you on the Steelers that, like you said, the line opened up at 8.5. I liked it a lot better then, but I still do like the 9. You know, the end of the season on that 4-0 straight up run, which is very promising to lean into this season. Kenny Pickett posted a top 15 passing grade in his rookie season. And you talk about not turning the ball over. He was the 7th lowest turnover worthy playmaker. That was his rate in the NFL last season. So he did a really good job of taking care of the ball. It's not crazy to think that he will continue, if not improve on that this year. And, you know, again, we talked about who they're seeing, the NFC West and the NFC South, or the AFC South, can't remember which one. But outside of the Niners, I do think that the NFC West should be a bit of a cakewalk for Pittsburgh. I am worried about week 1. Steelers are 3-0 straight up and against the spread in the last 3 week 1 games. I don't know who the quarterback is going to be. I am all in on Brock Purdy. I love Brock Purdy. I don't want him to see TJ Watt coming off an injury in week 1. That is one person I don't want him lined up against. But I do think that if the Steelers can stay above 500 in their division, then they can get over this. And let's say the Steelers did go 6-3 straight up in the last 9 games versus the AFC North. Now, we did say the AFC North has gotten tougher, but I think they can stay above 500 in the division. And then when you look at the Cardinals are going to win that game. The Rams are going to win that game. I think they beat the Texans. They go through and win that. So I agree. I think this can be a double-digit win team, but it looks like neither of us are going to sprinkle on that plus 500 to win the division.
I don't think it's insane. And if I were to pick a team to win the division, not named Cincy, then it would be the Steelers. You've talked about being thrown into the fire immediately. Imagine the Steelers' first round pick, Broderick Jones, Brojo, his first matchup, if he is named the week 1 starter, which he may or may not be, it will be Nick Bosa. So that'll be a fun introduction to the league. And then the week after that would be Myles Garrett for him. I hear you. That the Steelers have not forever had a week 1 home game. So that's something. And if you're going to catch the Niners, I think not just based on last year, they have, with Shanny, they've had coming out of the gate slow. Yeah. That wouldn't be a new thing for them. And especially this year, like you say, I mean, Brock Purdy's first game, like we don't, if he's playing, how many reps is he getting in the month of August in advance of that? Trey Lance, are you going to be excited? That feels more like a wild card than anything. So, the +2.5 in High Ackershire, I should say, Yins. Make sure we got it right. The matchup that football historians have coveted, that we'll never get to see, Joe Montana in the 80s Niners versus Terry Bradshaw in the 70s Steelers. But this is as good as we're going to do. And it's a dandy week 1 game. I do like the home team in that one, but I don't want to get bogged down with that. I don't know what injuries are going to happen between now and then.
Well, look, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't bet against the 49ers. I won't blindly back them on things, but I won't bet against them. I will say, the total there is 41. I would lean under. I think this is going to be a slugfest. I don't know that either offense is going to be able to get the ball moving all that much. So I would probably lean on the under in this game. We'll see how that line fluctuates. If it dips below 40, that might be a little bit interesting. But yeah, I would lean Steelers plus the 2.5 right here. And of course, hope that the 49ers win. But it's going to be tough.
You know what I like, though? What you said, what's most important to me is that you have a sense of decency. You have a football soul. Our mutual pal, cousin Sal, he loves to go in there and bet the don't pass line. That's what I always say. Philosophically, he will actually stand at the dice table and bet don't pass, which is, the curmudgeon bet of all curmudgeon bets.
Yeah.
But he also loves that, he'll bet against, he loves the Dallas Cowboys and he loves the Metropolitans and beyond. He'll bet against those teams to make a dime. Shame the devil, I say to that. No. I don't do it.
No.
And I do my best to not draft any AFC North teams. How childish am I? I try not to draft players on my fantasy team from the AFC North if they're not on the Steelers. And by the way, you mentioned Joe Burrow's season totals. And I think it was Burrows who you said you like him to go up over 5,000, whoever it was. That's another actually good one I like on the don't pass. Sal bets every skill position player to go under his yardage total. It's a pretty good bet because injuries are going to happen to most everybody. It's a pretty smart bet, actually. I actually support doing that.
Yeah, I don't bet with my heart. I only bet my team when I think that there is an edge there, but I will not bet against them. I will not feel good about myself winning money if my team lost. I care more about my team winning than winning a bet. I can't do it. I really can't do it.
People fooling themselves with that jive. They're like, well, don't you see it makes me a winner in either direction? Either my team wins or I win. No. Do you really feel good about that? Or are you just lying to the person in the mirror? I think it's the latter. And I think you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. Dave, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social, and you can check Dave out with the Extra Points Podcast Network and the -3 podcast. Dave, thank you so much.
Mox, you're the top. Shout out to Kirsten behind the scenes there.
Yes.
A great time.